Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache Snow. You can find articles and links to the show notes for this episode on nachesnow.com. That is NACHESNOW.com. Thank you for joining in again, or if you're new, welcome to the podcast. Know you can listen to it on iTunes, Stitcher, or any podcasting app of your choice. And you can find it on YouTube also if you go to nachesnow.com/YouTube. And I'm working on some videos actually to go there showing you guys some like tech and business tips. So be sure to subscribe if you like that type of thing. Okay, so I got a great guest on today. I just have one request from you guys. If you have not already, please sign up for my newsletter. You could go over to nachesnow.com/newsletter. So go over right now, just sign up, put your name and email address so you don't miss an episode and you don't miss out on any articles or freebies that I have. Like in this episode, for example, I mentioned a life diagram that I used almost like 8 years ago or so forth, and how that unintentionally worked as far as helping me achieve my goals. And I say unintentionally because I filled it out for a class, didn't think anything of it, look back on it years later, and I find that I've done like 80% of everything I wrote down. It's kind of crazy. So creating sheets and so forth like that, if you don't want to miss out on that, definitely go to nachesnow.com/newsletter and sign up now. But anyway, on to our guest. So Alison here from MCE, which is her company. I actually met her. You guys know I'm huge into the power of connection. And some of you guys know too that I, on the side, make laser cut home goods. So you can find that over at creativeroute.com. But anywho, she asked me, she saw a post on Instagram from somebody, and she was like, "Hey, I was wondering if you could make, a sign for me." She gave it as a gift. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And when I went to meet her to give her the sign, because it was like a pretty big sign, so it was like easier to drop it off since we were in the same area versus mailing it, we just had this amazing conversation. You know how you just like connect with someone? And I just connected to her like energy and her spirit. I could just tell she was like really passionate about what she does, passionate about the arts. And she just seemed like a really cool person. And we ended up keeping in contact because in that first meeting, after we met and talked for like 40 minutes or whatever, when it was really supposed to be just a drop off, I was like, hey, I'm starting this podcast and I'd love to have you on as a guest. And she was like, sure. And so we were corresponding through email, and yeah, we connected. And finally, I was able to interview her several months ago, which is pretty cool. So I tell you guys, power of connection. You just never know who you're going to meet. I feel like you just have to be open to those connections. Like, even if you're an introvert, like, don't shy away and just not talk to people. Like, if you are vibing with someone, don't feel intimidated or scared to continue to engage, or just to engage with someone that might really end up being like a good friend or just a good connection. But anywho, so this episode today, I wanted to talk to her about her company, MCE Arts, because she just started it last year. I just thought it was fascinating. Like, she's really big into the arts. Like, she started out as an African and jazz dancer from like a young age, and then just continued to be involved in it. And then her passion for the arts grew into her being really like this strategist, for other larger arts organizations, arts and cultural organizations. And it's so funny because I don't know if you guys remember the movie Brown Sugar and Sanaa Lathan's character. I mean, this movie is like from, I think, '02. But she reminds me of Sanaa Lathan because I also follow her on Instagram. And when I tell you, like, she loves music, and you probably can, like, play a song for her, and she'd be able to tell you, like, the artist and the name of the song. Like, her love for music is real. We don't really get into that too much. She talks a little bit about it at the end, but that's who she reminds me of. Like, if you remember that character, it's just someone who is like truly passionate about, the art, in that movie. In that case, it was music. But for her, it's everything. It's music, it's dance, it's making sure that arts programs get what they need to grow and increase their, visibility. Like, her passion really shows through. So anyway, the first part of this episode, we just talk a little bit about her background, like her dance background, and also we talk, about MCE Arts, what it's for, its purpose, how it's helping, different arts and cultural organizations. And in the second half of the interview, we talk more about strategy, like how, she was able to get teaching opportunities, how, she went about like finding an accountant, how did she, like, she has a really cool website, like how is she able to uh figure out what her brand was and then what went into her branding. We talk about the power of connection. And, she also gives like some actionable steps, for people who are trying to kind of figure out like who they are and then do what they need to do. So it's like a mix of a lot of different things in here. But I believe it's like a very cool and inspiring story. And you could definitely hear her passion in this interview. But anywho, I will not hold you guys up any longer. Let's get to it. Hello, Alison, and welcome to the Studio 78 podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's so funny because it really is like all about networking. So for the listeners out there, know that actually Alison and I connected through another side venture I have where I make handmade goods. And then when we met up, so I can kind of give her like the product she purchased, we just kind of clicked. And I'm like, God, she is amazing. I need to have her on my podcast. So,
It was just like that. Yeah, it was amazing. And it's a pleasure to have that conversation with you that evening and then to be here with you today.
yeah. So before we get into MCE Arts, can you just tell the listeners a little bit about your background?
So I am a strategist that works with arts and cultural organizations. I was trained as a dancer and also went to school and had my professional career primarily working in research, evaluation, and assessment. Now I use those same skills to support arts and cultural organizations.
A couple questions there. So, trained as a dancer, what type of dancer?
Trained as African dancer and jazz. Those were the two areas that stuck in my bones. And still continue. I still continue to take those dance classes today. I used to teach dance, probably 7 years ago now. I just haven't been able to teach like I liked to. But yeah, there's something special about the power of movement as a form of expression. And for me, who I usually, I'm working with different groups of people that are creatively expressive all the time. And usually my creation is working behind the scenes. But for me, dance provides that vehicle to express. So it's always been that area that resonated with me the most. I started out in a performing arts group as a young child, probably 6 years old, where we did dance, acting, and singing, and actually performed all over the world, doing different plays. I had an agent and
Oh,
realized
wow.
that the performing arts was where I needed to be. But dance is what stuck with me throughout, my teen years, in the 20s and 30s and, now.
Now, was it more like once you became an adult, more of like a hobby, or you also do like some actual shows, like professional shows?
So that's a great question. I would say from 6 to 15, I was in a repertory company that was hired to do performances on stages both in DC, New York, Tennessee, like all over the country, and then around the world. After I left that program, I danced with local dance companies in the DC area. So they were
Mm,
like pre-professional dance companies.
mm,
While in college, I danced with the dance company associated with the university. Left college and I taught dance to young kids when I was in college, and left college and taught adults and children jazz and Afro jazz, which is a combination of both. And then I did
mm.
some community theater where I may have gotten paid. I got paid or volunteered to work on different productions. So I'd say it's been really a combination of all of it. You know, whether it was me getting paid to perform or being a part of a larger group that did that as a service to the community. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
that
been
sounds cool.
interesting. And then I ended up working behind the scenes, supporting dance organizations because that's where my connection made the most sense. So serving on dance related boards like Step Africa or serving on dance grant panels just to ensure that funding was being equitably distributed to dance organizations.
Mm. And then also you mentioned research, evaluation, and assessment. So I'm sure some of the listeners out there are like, what is that?
I know. What is that? Right? Right?
Right.
It's crazy. Some days I ask myself the same thing, and actually, that's how I ended up transitioning out of that because it's like, that's not really so. Research, evaluation, and assessment. Um, all three are areas and or techniques used to determine impact
Mm,
with programming, for instance. So if you're looking at figuring out how impactful your organization is because of a program that you're implementing, you might assess how well it's being delivered to your constituents. If you want to evaluate to enhance the programming, then you might design a tool to look at what could be done better for program
mm,
implementation. Research might be if you are interested in, you know, trends in the field of interest. Like, so I did educational research, assessment, and evaluation for years before I transitioned to working behind the scenes for performing arts administration. And
mm-hmm.
that looked at everything from state education agency programs that had received federal funding to implement programs. So it was going to states to see how well they were launching programs to service students and assessing how well the coordinators were implementing programs, to designing manuals that documented what was necessary to run a program within a state. So it is a kind of broad term,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it really is looking at what you're currently doing, what you'd like to do, and how to use your insights from what you're doing in the field to grow your program. Oftentimes, I describe it
Okay.
as looking at your current state, like this is what we're doing now, this is what we'd like to do, and how do we get there? Assessment and evaluation tools usually help you go from point A to point B. Does that make sense? It's kind of difficult to describe sometimes,
No,
and there's
no,
so many ways
completely.
to think about it. Yeah.
And probably it'll come into play as you talk about MC arts too. I was going to ask, like, what year did you start MCE arts, and why did you decide to start it?
Well, I started MCE and last year, actually, 2016, after having worked with arts and cultural organizations on side freelance projects over the past 5 years.
Mm,
I decided it was time to formally establish my organization so that I could continue to do the work that I was doing, but then also expand on that work. Um, and it's crazy when you have an idea to start something and then you actually put in the motion to have it started. Things just start happening. So when people that I know heard that I was doing it, they came to me and they said, "Hey, we love what you're doing with this. Would you be interested in helping us work on a project?" And I'm like, "Oh, really?" So it was just a
right.
matter of like establishing, like oh, they're like, "Oh, we know that you do this work now, like formally. let's bring you on board. And it's just really been a blessing. Because the way
Mm,
I see MCE's work is, at its root, it's committed to the sustainable growth and increased visibility of arts and culture and communities. And that's a really broad statement, but it means that um, in very specific ways, whether it's strategy work, which
mm-hmm.
oftentimes is aligned to that assessment and evaluation and operational capacity type work that we talked about earlier, or philanthropic work or promotion work, we hope to increase accessibility to the arts.
Just to help the listeners who, they might be in a different field, but they're looking to kind of start their own business or build on like relationships that they've already created. What were some of the first things that you did in order to say, like, okay, world, I am an official business? Like, I see your website, which I love. You decided to create like a one-page website, and the colors, the branding, everything on it is like beautiful. So I'm assuming that was part of like the like, okay, I'm establishing my brand and this is who I am. But
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny because for someone that works with organizations to kind of do what I'm now doing on my own, that is like thinking about who you are, why you do what you do, and how you do what you do, it was an interesting exercise to do it for myself.
right.
Um, I was
It's
like,
always
how do
hard.
I think about this? Yeah, and I find that my interest areas and work fall in three areas. So thinking about how to talk about, so the very first step I took when deciding to do this was, okay, what do I want to do? And how do I want
Mm,
to describe it? Like, and why do I do it? I had to
mm,
get really clear on those three questions because the answers to those questions, in my opinion, would help me better tell my story. That is, what am I trying to do with this work? Why am I doing it? And how am I doing it? And so, um, it was clear to me after a little bit of exploration that ultimately MCE is really committed to being like a change agent. We want to get in there and
mm,
change the way, work with alongside organizations to change the way that they operate. And based on my observation, because I've been able to work in very different aspects of the field, I
mm-hmm,
saw that the primary ways that my skill set could be of service was in the strategy area, which is helping organizations to remove roadblocks, make connections, and create resources. It was also in philanthropy to create new models and to increase resources for arts and cultural organizations. And then in the promotion area, that is to increase the visibility of artists and artist organizations. And so once I figured out that that is kind of those are the areas where I've had the most experience, and where I saw a need, it was just a matter of writing that down in a way that was kind of, hopefully, you can let me know, succinct on my site, so that if you didn't know what I did, you could kind of just go to my site and hopefully be able to tell that. But in entrepreneurial world, it seems like this notion of relationship building oftentimes is what gets you, the projects that you end up working on. So I have my site here to
mm-hmm.
tell my story for those who don't know me. But in most cases, with the clients that I had last year, those clients ended up connecting me to future clients. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of funny how that happened. But yeah, I would say this is a long answer, but I'd
Oh, yeah.
say I got clear on what it was I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, why I wanted to do it, wrote those answers down, and then worked with a graphic designer to um, pull together my website and my logo. And he was so much more than just a, here's what I want, can you make it happen, come to life. He really was almost like a consultant, in
Mm.
that he was helping me push through, which is, I guess, jargony language, like, oh, this makes complete sense to me. He's like, I have no idea what that means. So he would help me figure out, okay, and in its barest, simplest sense, what what is it? So, I mean, I think through that process, I was able to develop my website and my business cards have a similar look.
Mm,
I was very clear that I wanted my company to have a certain feel. Like I wanted it to be warm and engaging, but also professional, but also relatable. So I think that guided the color scheme that I use, the pictures that are on there, and even the cards that I use.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, and everything you said as I was like scrolling through the site, it's like right on par. So I think you were able to really kind of capture what you were looking for. Now, I have one question because you were talking about like how you are a change agent. So, for example, let's say if some of the listeners out there have a arts initiative or program or so forth, how do they know when they need someone like you? Does that question make sense?
I
Because
think
it's like how
so.
sometimes people don't know when they need help. Like, but are there any, I guess, signs that they should look for? Like, you know what, I need someone to come in from the outside and talk strategy with me. Or is that
Yeah.
just something every type of arts program or organization just needs in general, like that outside perspective?
Well, that's a great question. I think that more often than not, at least in my experience, because I should preface this to say, I've worked in supportive arts and cultural organizations. I've been on an arts board. I've been an arts grant maker. I've run professional development programs for arts and culture organizations. I've been an artist. I feel like once you're an artist, you're always an artist. But then I've also been in charge of managing volunteers. So I think the perspective that I bring just encapsulates so many different aspects of the work that needs to be done. So when you're
Mm,
thinking about, and I use that insight to work for my clients, and when necessary, working with strategic partners to do the work of the people that hire me, the organizations that hire me. How will someone know that they need my help? If they're spinning their wheels trying to crack a nugget
mm,
that they believe will get them to the next phase of their business goals, but they just can't figure out how to get to the next phase. Like they may be doing okay with their current operations, but they want to take it to the next level. I want to know, like for instance, I want to know why my current business operations aren't getting me the grants that I need to get, or I'm not tapped into the networks in order to raise visibility about my work in the field. Can you help me do that? So that might be something that someone calls me to work on. Or we have been running this organization for 3 years and we're barely staying afloat. And
mm,
while we know we have very dedicated and passionate people connected to our work and our mission, what we're currently doing is not functioning, is not effectively achieving our goals. And we
mm.
almost feel like we're at a deficit. How do we get from where we are to where we'd like to be? So maybe it's a strategic planning process. Maybe it's an operational review where you look at your business process operations and figure out what can we do differently? What can we remove? What do we keep? What should we enhance? These are the sorts of questions that I might help and that I have helped arts organizations answer. And all of that work is pretty much in the strategy realm of my work, but also working with local communities to engage artists in a new and an innovative way. Thinking about how you have a bunch of businesses come together in a county, but there are very little arts and culture that show up. And when you bring them together and you want to introduce artists to that space, but you're not really sure how or who to introduce. So a county might call me and say, we want to have artists here, but we don't know how to make it a natural fit. Like, can you help us think about what that process might be like? That's more in the
Mm.
promotion side, but um, that would be, I guess, two very distinct examples of how an organization might think, oh, I might need MCE support.
Okay. No, that completely makes sense.
And I also am working as an online, I'm teaching online courses for
Mm.
art culture leaders, which when I originally took on the project, I was like, oh, is this strategy? I guess so. It's a way to strategically support the leaders of organizations. So we are literally working through concepts related to strategy and positioning and impact management and how that lands in the work that they do. So I don't know that someone would say, I would like Allison to teach a class. Although they could, because I teach classes with about it, and I also do workshops for it. So I'm
Mm.
preparing to do a workshop for an arts council next month on how to collect and interpret data so that you can better build your programming.
No, so that's interesting. Like, so even just getting back a little bit to like when you first started last year, you created your brand and so forth, and then you use like existing connections, or really they just found you in order to get work. Was your strategy initially to make money through kind of like, coming in as like mostly a consultant, and then that ended up leading to teaching in workshops, or was that like always in the plan to bring money to MCE Arts?
My plan originally, this is so funny, was to take about 6 months to really outline the type of projects that I wanted to work on, who I wanted to target, and let that plan dictate the road. Let that plan be the roadmap for how I started working under my MCE brand. However, um, the first person reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we have this online teaching opportunity specifically in strategy positioning and impact management, and I love the work that you do and the way you talk about the importance of those areas. Would you be interested in doing that?" And I'm like, "Oh." So I had to think back to, because at that point when they asked me, I had my three areas of service, my three service areas, if you will, identified, but I hadn't thought through who I would target to kind of solicit business. So that project kind of fell in my lap, and I was like, "Sure, I'll do it."
Mm.
And honestly, the four clients I had last year, with the exception of one, that's how they all happened. They all fell into the strategy bucket, but it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of, I want to say, and this is probably not good, but kind of happenstance. Like it just happened that the people that reached out to me were clear enough about the type of work that I did that when they reached out, what they were seeking help with was what I hoped to do under MCE, but I hadn't really planned it out and written it out and set my roadmap um,
Mm-hmm.
to do that work. And the only project that I had, the only client that I had last year that I actually sought out through an RFP process was one out in Los Angeles. And that was also still related to the strategy area of my work. But again, even that I saw in an email, like, if you're interested in this, consider applying. So I feel like as I enter into year two, that roadmap that I mentioned is really what I'm
Mm-hmm.
focusing on now. Like, okay, this is what I say I want to do. How do I want to do it? I set like 3-year strategic goals for how I want to operate my business. That is like in finance, professional development, impact. Um, but I hadn't figured out, how am I going to get this done? It was
Right.
like kind of, it happened along the way, which is kind of weird. My mentor, who's been like, "You need to write your business plan," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And so I have, like, it's like 70% done, but the reality is the work has been coming in, so I've been like doing both. Um,
Mm.
because I am a strategist, I know that the more you plan, the more successful you will be. So I'm like, I cannot go and work with organizations without a clear roadmap for my own work.
Mm-hmm.
So I have set myself on a deadline. By February 1st, I'll have it done. And actually, I have to show it to my mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's another part of my process. Like, I work with a mentor who regularly holds me accountable for what it is I say I want to do, so that I'm
Mm.
not kind of just floating on my own. Like, we check in monthly, actually, and he reminds me of what I said I was going to do the month before, what I've actually done. He checks in with me on whether the business decisions I've made support my brand, support my mission, make sense financially. In some cases, I'm like, "I think it does," and he's like, "I think it doesn't." And so we're just like thinking about it. I'm really thankful. For the space that he holds in my business thinking, because it's helped tremendously with keeping on board and staying encouraged and doing
Mm-hmm.
great work for my clients.
Now, how did you, because, I think a lot of folks always hear that too. Like, you should have, like, at the very least, like one mentor, someone you can go to that kind of holds you accountable. How did you find that mentor? Did you like seek him out? Did you go through like a program? Was it just by accident?
Yeah, that's a great question. And ironically, he's one mentor of probably about four. The
Mm,
other four, the other three rather, are specifically focused on experts in the field. Like they are field experts in arts presenting or arts evaluation, or whereas he is really like a business mentor, meaning, if you're an entrepreneur or getting your business started, what have you done? What have you not done? And I found him through the SCORE program, ironically,
mm,
which is a service of the Small Business Administration, I believe.
yeah.
Um, and specifically, I live in Arlington, Virginia, and the Arlington Economic Development, um, I guess, agency connected me with him after I expressed interest. And originally, I was like, I don't know. I don't know him at all. How will it work out? Does he know my field? And does he understand my thought? Because that part of me suffered with I'm doing three different things. Does that even make sense? How will I make that make sense? And, but he's been incredibly helpful and very supportive and, like I said, holds me accountable. And I didn't know him at all. Um,
Mm-hmm.
at all, like at all. I was literally matched with him. The SCORE process, you fill out an application indicating your business, the type of work you do, what type of goals you want to achieve, and they match you, I guess, to the best of their ability with someone within their cadre of mentors. And then they meet with you as often as you like. I mean, well, it has to make sense for each schedule, but
Mm-hmm.
it's been very, very useful. I'm thankful.
Yeah, no, I think that's like amazing because I think sometimes people are like, do those programs work? Like, does it make sense? But I think having a mentor is amazing because you need someone that you can bounce ideas off of and hold you accountable. Now, another thing, like, even I'm struggling with now is, what you hear is like, you should also, like, when starting a business, have like a lawyer that's in the area and maybe a CPA. Like, were those
Yeah.
things that you invested in immediately?
Let's see. So I had an accountant that would help me with my taxes as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say last fall, I went through the process of identifying an ideal tax preparer and financial planning consultant because I knew that just like many arts organizations, you might be incredibly gifted in the creative aspect or the artistic aspect of your work, but the administrative side is just as important. And oftentimes that piece is what will contribute to not the downfall, but contribute to, any challenges that exist. So I wanted to and was prepared to set aside some financial support to get quality help. So I interviewed about four different accountants
Mm,
to support my business because I wanted to make sure that one, they understood, the way that I work, the type of clients that I'll get, the flow of my money, and help me be able to understand how to use my financial progress to determine which clients I would take on, which ones I wouldn't, and then also do my taxes because I run MCE on my own, but I also am a co-founder and partner at another arts social enterprise, and so I
mm.
make money from that as well. So it's just a lot. So it's like you got
Right.
to think about where the money goes to, where it comes from, and expenses for the business. And I was like, I don't want to get lost in all of these details. And so, yeah, I was able to secure an accountant at the end of last year, and we have been working together since the beginning of this year to try to get things in order. And we talked through my financial goals, and luckily I'd done those 3-year strategic goals, which included financial goals. So
Mm,
I was able to just share that with them, and they're like, "Oh, okay." And you know what, Nache, there's power in like writing down what you envision because I wrote down these
absolutely.
strategic goals I think it was the same time I was building my website. It was like, this is what, and they were literally like, I want to attend one conference. I want to
Right.
present at one conference. I want to make this much money. I want to have this
Mm-hmm.
many clients. Like they were that specific. And when I look back at my year one goals, I accomplished all of them. I think part of it is because I wrote it down. And the other part
Mm-hmm.
is that, I don't know, the universe just makes it happen. Like, I guess when you articulate what it is that you want. So when I met with the tax accountant, he was like, "Oh, looks like you made your year one goals." I was like, "I know. How random is that?" But I'm also mindful, like year two, as an entrepreneur, nothing's ever promised. It's up and
Mm-hmm.
down, and with everything that's going on in the world today, and with arts always being on the chopping block, you just never know.
Yeah. No,
So,
absolutely.
so I'm mindful of that too as I go into year two, which I think is why I'm like, I need to be even more prepared because you just never know.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. And it's so funny. I absolutely agree with you about writing it down. Like I may have mentioned it on another podcast, but when I was in graduate school at the University of Baltimore, like I don't know, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, I don't even know. But anywho, they had us do this life diagram, and it's funny. I might even offer it on the site,
Hmm.
but I wrote it down for a class because it was part of the class assignment. And it's like, where do you want to be in your 9 to 5? Do you have any other goals? What do they look like right now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And for the most part, besides the last one, which changed a little bit, though everything that I wrote down happened. And I never looked at that paper again, but
Yeah,
it's something, right? Like I did
except
it
that's
for the
powerful.
class,
It
right?
really is because
It's
I
so
was like,
weird.
because I really, when I tell you, I went into this business like this is something that I'm passionate about. This is something that I've always done naturally. But friends, family have been like, you need to do this like full time. You need to make this your business. And I'm like, I don't know. And so because I am a planner and a researcher, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to just write down what I'd like to happen and just see what happens. And I think I wrote it
Mm-hmm.
down last maybe May or June because I started my first contract as NCE in January. My website didn't launch until June, and by the time it launched, because I was sitting on a conference panel at a National Arts Service conference, I was like, I need for my website to be ready when I go to this conference so that I could
Mm.
pass out my cards, and it was very haphazard.
Right,
Um,
right,
I was like, oh, okay, I guess I gotta do, and it was just, but when I look back at that paper that was very specific, I'm like, whoa,
right. It's
that
like it's kind of
happened.
crazy.
There's
Yeah.
power in writing it down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I just had a couple more questions for you. One is like, you talked about teaching like online courses and doing some workshops too. How do you, now I don't know if like the workshops are things like sponsored by other places, but even like the conference you just missed it. Like how do you find those opportunities? Because I think a lot of us struggle with that too, like figuring out how to get ourselves out there, how to get at that women's conference, how to teach for, maybe, a college or whatever else. Like, how have you been able to do that?
So by nature, I love people. I love talking to people. I love hearing about what they're working on, what they are interested in doing, and in a lot of cases, I just am talking to people, and it's not even with any motive other than like I'm really interested in what you're doing. So we might talk, I don't know, November 2015, and maybe we don't talk again until November 2016, but something in the conversation that was said, they'll remember. And if something happens, they'll reach out to me like, I remember one time you said this, you did this work. Would you be
Mm,
interested? So that would be one way that it's happened. Another way is since I worked in the arts administration field, or I should say, worked in the performing arts field prior, I just knew a lot of different types of people and I maintained relationships with them, like just checking in, like, hey, here's what I'm doing these days. What are you doing? Just to stay in touch. Even when I wasn't working directly with them, I just wanted to, keep that relationship open
mm,
because you never knew when I might, finally launch whatever business I'm doing. And in keeping that relationship, they were made aware that I was now working on my own, and so maybe they would put in a good word for me
mm,
with someone else, or one project I got offered to work on, we worked on like a volunteer project together. We both served on a
Oh.
committee delivering, I think we were designing a survey to assess a need. Like this particular organization was interested in figuring out if their members were satisfied, what they could do to expand satisfaction or enhance satisfaction, and just gathering some demographic data. And me and this woman worked together on that committee to design the survey. Of course, that is one of my expertise areas, and I was doing it as a member of the committee, but she, I guess, was impressed with that and
Mm.
then ended up reaching out to me later like, I see you are really good at, asking the questions that got us closer. Are you interested in, participating in this proposal? And I'm like, really? Sure.
Right.
And I think it was almost like you never know who's watching you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, I didn't know that, that opportunity would come from that. I just was doing what I do. So that would be another
Right.
way. Another way is I just would ask, like, hey, I have this business, and we are looking for ways to share our skill sets with arts and cultural organizations. I have a relationship with you, and you run an arts organization. Would you be interested in having me come in and talk about what I do or how I do it? Or, just, and they would be like, okay. And I'm like, really?
Oh.
You just never know.
Right.
Sometimes you just gotta ask. I mean, other cases maybe it didn't work out that smoothly, but in some cases it did. So I mean, I
Mm.
think just putting yourself out there is one way. For the conference that I mentioned that I was speaking on the panel, they reached out to me, and I
Mm-hmm.
have no idea. I mean, I assume it's through, one of my existing clients, but they were like, hey, like I literally got an invitation letter, and I'm like, okay, this
Wow.
is
Yeah.
weird. So, and I think again, it's that notion of people are watching what you're doing even when you don't realize it. So the extent to
Mm-hmm.
which you show up fully in everything you do, whether it's free, whether it's paid, whether it's just a regular conversation, you just never know.
That's so
So
true.
that's been my experience, and I don't know, that might sound weird, as far as, well, and it really, I guess it also depends on the industry. If you're working
Mm.
in an industry where you already have connections, and, people have already experienced the work that you do, then having them bring you in is not that far of a stretch because they've somehow already connected to what you're doing. If you're completely starting something different where you're starting from the ground up, I'd say go to the spaces where you see the people doing the work that you want to do. Figure out
Mm.
how to get involved, even if it's on a, short-term basis, volunteer basis. And I don't promote like free work necessarily as much as, but in those areas where you're trying to start something new, join networks that are doing what you want to do. End
Mm-hmm.
up in spaces where the people are so that they know who you are, because a lot of times it's just the awareness so that someone can say on your behalf, oh, well, do you know Allison? She does. And
Mm.
when you're at the point where people are speaking for you, I think I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know how that happens. I wish I had like a I don't even know. Like someone called me just last week about a search that they were doing, for a major arts organization, and I was like, how'd you get my name? And then they
You're
told me,
right.
and they got my name from one of my clients, and I was like, oh, okay. And I wouldn't have even thought that they would have thought of me in that capacity. So you just never know.
Mm.
Again, who's thinking about you, who has you on their radar. And I've been blessed to have some really great clients for my first year of business.
Sounds
And I
like
don't
it.
take that
Yeah.
lightly because it's not hard in these streets. I mean, it's not
Right.
easy in these
Easy.
streets.
Yeah.
Like, just the same, I can't guarantee that every year will be like that. So I'm trying my hardest to continue to do good work, show up as I am with whatever work I do. MCE, our motto is, transparency, compassion, and curiosity. That is because of the type of work we do. A lot of times I don't want to say it's judgment. People might view it as we're judging what you're currently doing. Like, so if you bring us on to help you get from one state to the next, we got to figure out what's keeping you from that.
Right.
But we want to make sure that people, feel confident that we're not there to judge, and we come with a compassionate, heart to really try to figure out what is um, the growth opportunity. So I
Mm,
think also having that nature helps people believe and trust in what you're doing and
mm-hmm.
your skill set. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Completely. No, I think everything you said makes sense, and I think also that it's given people some actionable items, uh,
Okay.
and it puts people like on notice in a good way. Like no matter, because I believe in that too. No matter what you do your best, even if you think no one is noticing or no one is looking. Like everything you do should be your best, and
Yeah.
you just never know where those opportunities might lead.
Yeah, you really don't, because I'm telling you, there's power in, being your authentic self. I feel like there's a lot of talk these days about the power of authenticity and, doing good work and all of that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is true. And I think that that is ultimately, the desire to really support someone's objectives and goals, the skill set to actually do that, and some credible, I guess, projects under my belt to kind of say that I've done it is what helps to continue
Mm-hmm.
to place me in positions. But I also have to be prepared. So it's one thing for someone to reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you do this?" But if I'm not really prepared, it's the ability to recognize I'm not at a point where I can take on this project, or because I don't want to take on a project and not be able to do it well just to take it on. And then also being clear about the work that I'm doing at all times, supporting the three buckets of work that I, say MCE does. That is the strategy, philanthropy, and promotion. So if it doesn't really fall in those categories, and that's something my SCORE mentor always reminds me, like, someone reached out and they'd like for me to help. And he's like, but what does that have to do? And I'm like, oh, okay.
Right. But no, it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when you mention like authenticity, like I think people hear that a lot and that's a big buzzword. But it's true, you do need to be your authentic self, but you need to know who that self is too, right? Like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people don't even know who their authentic self is and what they're trying to represent and what they're trying to do in their business. So they can't even
Mm-hmm.
achieve it because they haven't even really discovered who they are and what they want to do, right? In a
Right.
way.
And I think that's how when I first sat down to do, and I want to say, like, developing my website was almost like developing, like, the beginning parts of me developing my business plan, in the sense that I had to be really clear on, and it's still evolving as far as the content that I want to use, but who do I want to service? Why do I want to service them? And how do I want to service them? Because those are all of the things that I hope to answer on my site. And if I was not able to do that, then for me, it would have been difficult to articulate to others what I do, why I do it. And then also to determine whether the clients that or the potential clients that I solicited or, came to me, whether or not they fit in to what it is I said I did.
Mm,
So it works all the way around. Like, the clearer you are on what you do, the easier it is for people to either find you, for you to solicit business, to maintain and or create new relationships. Because,
mm-hmm.
I find that most of the people I reach out to, they may be extremely busy, but if they have the time, they'll sit down and talk with you. But the first thing they want to know is, okay, what do you need help with? Or what do you
Right.
do? And if you're still trying to figure that out, that's okay. But even being clear about that helps them know where and how they can, support you. Because most people that I know, including myself, when someone reaches out to me, I definitely want to be supportive, but it helps me to help them to know what it is that they're doing or what they're at least trying to do.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great stuff. Well, I just want to end this interview with like I asked everyone this totally random question.
Okay.
What is something that you cannot live without? And it could be
Music.
anything.
I
Ah!
love music. Like, music is air, like breath. Like, so dance is expression, music is breathing, like healing is what I
Mm,
call it. Like, there is so of the three disciplines within performing arts, theater, music, and dance, I was trained as a dancer, but music is what moves the needle for me. Like I can hear a
Mm,
song and think of a dance, a piece to choreograph to it. There's a song for every emotion.
mm.
Um, if I was running out of burning building, I would grab my iPod uh, and my music collection because I don't think like yeah, it's pretty intense with me, and I think everybody that knows me, they're like, okay, wow, you are like seriously on that music. But it's again, it's in the arts. Yeah, so I couldn't live without my music.
No, that's great. And where can the audience find you? Please let them know your website and any social media handles you want them to know about.
Okay, sure. So my website is www.mcearts.com. That's M for McNeil, C for Creative, E for Enterprises, mcearts.com. My Twitter handle is at mcearts. And once you go to my website, you'll learn a little bit more about me and how to get in contact with me. But yeah, I think that's it.
No, that's perfect. Thanks so much, Allison. I think you've given a lot of like actionable steps here. And so
Oh,
I appreciate I'm glad I met you.
I know. Happenstance is never random. I do believe
I
that.
know. So I hope you guys like this episode. I know it's one of my longer episodes, almost an hour. But I just love getting into people's brains and really figuring out like how they think and how they go about things. So I'm trying to find a sweet spot for the episodes. Is it 30 minutes? Is it 45 minutes? Is it an hour? I love to get your thoughts. Shoot me an email at hello@nachesnow.com. You could respond to a newsletter. You could add something in the comments. You could send me a direct message on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, whatever your jam is. Just kind of give me your thoughts. I never get offended by any feedback people give me. So let me know how you like this format. Let me know if you like short or long format. I don't know unless you tell me. But anyway, I thought this was great. I hope you guys too kind of just saw like her passion for the arts kind of shine through. It was pretty amazing. The three questions that she asked herself as she was creating the MCE brand: what do I want to do? How do I want to describe it? And what do I want to, or excuse me, and why do I want to do it? I think are great questions, that anybody who is trying to establish a brand should ask. And when I tell you, if you go over to her website, and the link will be in the show notes over at nachesnow.com/13, like everything that she talked about is like pretty much like reflected on her website. And she chose to do a simple one-page website, but it's short, effective, and to the point, because I think sometimes people think they have to have this multi-page website, but you don't. And so I think by asking herself those questions, by getting a great graphic designer that just didn't design it but really made sure he understood where she was coming from and worked with her, like really helped her establish a strong brand. And I love too how she says, like, it's not just really the website that gets her business, it's the connections that she's made. The website is just like a landing place, like if you need to provide somebody with more information, or if someone is searching something online that they could happen to discover you. But it is not the main like portal for getting business a lot of times for entrepreneurs. It is that connection that you have made with other people. So you don't ever underestimate the power of connection. I don't care if you're an introvert or an extrovert, you can make connections. I made tons of connections with people who are introverted. So if you're an introvert, just don't try to use that as an excuse, because I know a lot of introverts that are amazing at networking. Anywho, if you want to learn more about Allison, check her out at any of the links she mentioned. She also started an Instagram, MCE Arts. That's MCEARTS. And of course, her show notes are at nachesnow/13. Thank you again for listening in. and I have some other great people coming up. And I'm also, I've said I was going to do some solo episodes, but I've just wanted to get these interviews out so much. I haven't really worked on one, but I'm going to try to work on one either for next week or the week after, to talk about some things that I think you guys may want to know more about. So be sure anyway to go over and sign up for the newsletter at nichesnow.com/newsletter. That's the first thing. Second thing I need you to do is please head over to iTunes, Nache Snow/iTunes, and leave a rating and review. That really, really helps me. And if you're not an Apple person, please, like, if you can leave a review in whatever app you're using, that helps too. Like, the more exposure, the better. And then the third thing I ask is when you see things on social media, if you can comment or share or tag someone, that is huge, because when it comes to algorithms and Facebook and Instagram, like, that's how more people discover you. And so I feel like without me doing really any PR yet, like, the reason I've been able to achieve like what I have so far is from you guys doing it. So please continue to do that. It really helps. So thank you again for tuning in and all of your support. And I hope that these episodes are helping you to get to that next place in life. All right. Have an amazing morning, noon, and night. And I will talk to you next week.